Hi, my name is Amanda Petchen. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to be talking about how to come up with ideas. When I self-published my book, a lot of my friends asked me how I did it, like how I wrote a book, how I came up with the ideas and all these things. And the truth is, for my books, I mostly winged it. I had these ideas that had already started, I had these books that I'd sort of written but hadn't worked on enough, and I found out a way to publish them. I made a lot of mistakes, I did a lot of research as I was doing it, changed things as I was going along. I didn't have a clear plan that worked. I had to change a lot of things to get there. But I do have a series that I want to publish the right way from the starting. I want to do all those things that I was afraid to do for my first series, all of the marketing, all of the research, all of everything. I want to do this properly from A to Z. And I figured instead of doing it on my own, I would do a series of videos, not to tell you how, but to show you how I will be publishing my book from conception, from the first coming up with the idea to after it's been published and figuring out how to do the translations and promoting it and doing box sets and whatever comes after. If you want, you can follow along because I'll be trying to post the videos in the same order that you would do the steps. But if you'd prefer, you can also watch and see how my book launch goes and then decide whether or not my advice is worth it. I'm definitely not an expert. Most of the stuff I'm going to be researching and then telling you what I find out, but some of it will be from personal experience and mistakes that I've done with my other books that I've launched and with the books that I'll be publishing along the way. The first step is finding a concept, a story idea of what you'll write about. So I'm going to give you 6 tips that you can use to come up with a story if you don't have one. So number 1 is to look at the world around you. You can look at current events like in the newspaper, on TV, in the news, in magazines. If a story strikes you or makes you think of things or makes you feel things, write it down. First of all, if you are a writer, you should always have a notebook on you or have a document open on your phone or something, because ideas come and they go and you don't want to miss them. You can look at technology, any new things that they've come up with, new surgeries, 3D printers, time travel, AI, like robots, anything like that is really interesting to think of and to elaborate and turn into ideas. Or people you know, people that you see. When I go out with my mom and we're eating, if there's a couple beside us who's having a really loud conversation, we'll often eavesdrop and try to figure out what's going on, what are the relationships between the different people and what's happening and what their backstory is and where they're going to go from here. And often I think we're completely off the mark and we have no idea what's going on, but it's really cool to imagine and it's a starting point for your story. Number 2 would be from personal experiences. So if you've had your own love story, if you suffered a tragedy or a trauma, if you've been involved in anything it doesn't even have to be noteworthy, just coming of age, growing up, there's so many ideas that you can draw from your own personal history. When I was growing up, my family owned a campground, which had so many exciting things happen. For instance, one time these armed robbers drove into our gate and then ran off on the campground to avoid the cops. And we had a search with SWAT and dogs and all day long trying to find these escaped convicts, and just a lot of things are ripe for story ideas. That being said, they say that you should write what you know, and I'm completely on board with that. If you write what you know, you'll have much more of a personal touch. You'll be able to add details that other people probably won't be able to come up with because you'll have lived through it. But I don't think that you should limit yourself by what you've experienced, because if you did, we wouldn't have sci-fi or fantasy or a lot of really interesting stories, because people would never imagine what it'd be like to not be living their day-to-day life, which I think is kind of the point of writing sometimes, most of the time. So write what you know, but also explore outside of your comfort zone. Number 3 is to look at books, movies, and songs that are already out there. I do not want you to steal ideas or plagiarize them or anything like that. I am definitely a proponent of your intellectual property, write your own story, create your own ideas, your own characters, and all that stuff. It's a lot easier as far as lawsuits and stuff are concerned. But you can definitely be inspired by them. You can look at a book that you really like, look at the plot and see how you can change it and make it different so it's your own, but look at the things that you loved about it. If you loved a character, then try to create your own character that has those same elements and put them in a different situation. If you really liked the dystopian element of it, come up with a different version of that. I mean, you can set things in different places. You can make it underwater, make it set in space, make it set in the past, make it there's all kinds of ways that you can make stories your own, so they keep the elements that you love about them, but not the creative property of the person who wrote them. If there's a side character that you think is really intriguing, you can kind of wonder what was his past like? What will his future be? What will you can borrow elements. I really want to stress, like, don't steal, don't plagiarize ideas, but like for my book, Shards of Glass, I'm not going to tell you what, but the characters were inspired by like a dozen different characters from different shows that I was watching, where I just put them all together and put them in this situation and wanted to see what would happen to them. But like the only character that was really me, that I really created out of nowhere, was Rachel. If you look at Harry Potter, Star Wars, and Lord of the Rings, they all have basically the same plot if you don't go into details. You know, you have a chosen one who grows up thinking he's normal and then finds out that actually no, he's a part of this much bigger deal, and he has a mentor who will help him as he tries to defeat this big bad at the end of the movie, you know. But they're definitely different stories. They have lots of elements that are very different. So that's what I'm talking about. You can take the same elements, but you have to create your own story around it and make it different enough that it's not stealing somebody else's idea. It's just inspiring yourself from it, kind of. It's a careful line to walk, but you know, I'm sure you can figure it out. And I love songs. You can put songs on your playlist that'll help inspire you to write the books. But sometimes a song will tell a story that you really want to see play out, like you want to know how they got there and what happens after the song ends. So that could also be a really cool starting point. Number 4 is to think, what if? Like, I just finished watching The Man in the High Castle, which has a lot of science fiction elements to it. But the premise at the beginning of it is, what if Germany won the Second World War? And I think that is such a fascinating idea that really, like, there's so many things in history that if one person had done one thing different, everything would be different right now. And I think that's a really cool concept to explore. Number 5 is to use plot generators. I know they have one with NaNoWriMo, but just, you know, you can either ask a friend to give you a character, a place, a theme, a time, an object of some kind, and you can try to write a story with it. I'm not saying it'll be like the story that you want to write, but from writing lots of these different little stories, you build that creative muscle, and eventually you will definitely land upon something that's really cool and really interesting. It's a lot easier to write a story when you're not staring at a blank page. If you have something to go off of, the ideas will flow and you should be able to figure it out. Number 6, you can look at images or paintings. There's so many paintings out there that tell a story, but you don't know what the story is. And I also do this with pre-made covers. So if you're buying a book cover, you can get them, you can pay somebody to design one for you, or you can also buy some that have been made already. And I find that looking at those covers, I have so many ideas of stories that I want to write that I'm like, I could buy this cover and then this would be the story that I would tell. And it really is inspiring because the covers are made specifically to suggest a genre, to suggest a story, to suggest characters. So it's not clearly written, but there's a suggestion of it that you can run with, and you can create incredible things starting off from these pre-made covers. So those are just a few ideas I have for coming up with story ideas. I personally come up with a lot of my ideas based on things that I watch. I like to pick like one character or one line that was said, and I focus on that, and that becomes everything until I have a whole story and a backstory and everything that goes with it. I used to write fan fiction, and when I did, it was always, I had one character that was mine that I created. I didn't write fan fiction for the characters that were already in there. I would add my own character into that universe, into that world, and I would just have her interact with the characters that were there, but she was always going on her own adventures and living her own things. So for me, having a setting just made everything really easier for me than starting off with a blank page. So this was episode 1 of what I'm calling the Academy series. If you enjoyed it, please like. If you want to have more videos like this, you can subscribe to my channel, ring the bell to be notified every time I post a new one, which will be every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern. In the comments, if you can tell me what you're interested to learn about this and what parts of publishing mystify you and you'd like to have more information on, I will make sure to include it in this series. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week.